Hey Brainiacs, thank you for tuning in to another episode of My Humble Opinion. I'm at Cam's Brain, and again, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but throughout the past 3 months, I've been posting certain shorts on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and they're based on a book by Robert Greene called The 48 Laws of Power. This book, some people swear by it. Some people really don't like the book. Some people feel like it's a red flag if they meet somebody and that person says, "Yo, I'm reading the 48 Laws of Power." I get it. It's a very controversial. It's a very controversial book. It's typically and mostly based on being able, or the art of manipulation, right? So the concept of the book itself is to teach one person how to deal with other people by being manipulative in so many ways. I take it differently. So the book for me, it allows me to be able to study how other people think. That way, if I'm in a particular situation, I kind of know how to navigate through certain things that may be occurring. I think it's very important personally to be in a position where I'm able to redact what I want to say, what I don't want to say, based on a person's behavior, right? So while the book may be a book of manipulation, or it may be a book that people who do some pretty sketchy things read, it's still good to know it. Like, you want to be aware of your enemy, right? You want to be aware of what you may be getting yourself into, especially when you have to navigate this thing called life. I think is very important. But anyways, like I was saying earlier, I have been doing shorts based on each parable, is what I would typically call it, from the book. The first one being Never Outshine the Master. This is a very interesting one for a few different reasons. So never outshining the master can be a very interesting thing. It can also be a very strategic thing. It can be something as simple as like in parenting, like letting your kids win so that they can build confidence. It can be something as drastic as like letting your boss win a game of poker so that he doesn't feel like, you know, he's less superior than you. The basis of that parable for me is pretty deep, and I think it's also very important to, like, some people, and this is from my own personal experiences, like when I've been around certain people that are successful and I learned something from them, and say for instance I make a little bit more money than them, what ends up happening, sometimes those people get a little jealous of you, right? And then they may not share as much as they typically would share, because they see how quick you can take what they were able to do and flip it and make it a little bit more better than they did. Like, for instance, when I was younger, it was this guy that had a car dealership. And at the time, I was like selling like stuff on the street, like candy and snacks and, you know, just little simple things that I can hustle and get money from. And Valentine's Day rolled around, so I went to the dollar store. I made some baskets and boxes and stuff like that to sell to people for Valentine's Day. And I needed somewhere, you know, kind of like a stationary area to sell the items. And the guy at the car dealership had a car dealership. So I walked in there and I'm like, "Hey man, you think it would be okay if I stand out front and sell my baskets for Valentine's Day?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, man, you an entrepreneur, you know, that's what's up. I don't have no problem with that," so on and so forth. So a few days went by, I was making, you know, a little bit of money, nothing crazy. Like I said, I'm just selling Valentine's Day baskets. And he came over to me and he's like, "Yo man, I sell cars, and you know, you doing this is really no different," so on and so forth. So I was like, okay, yeah, I would definitely be interested in that. So he kind of started me off kind of like he doing like booty duty, basically. Like, he had me going to the car auction place and picking up the cars that he had already bought and dropping them off to his spot, you know, cleaning them, vacuuming them out, stuff like that, which I have no problem with. Now, here's the concept where I say it can get tricky and it could be as severe as doing things strategically in business. So because I was a little frustrated, but not visibly, I wasn't like visibly frustrated or arrogant with him, but because I wanted to learn a little bit more, what I ended up doing was letting him know, I'm like, hey man, is there a way that you can kind of start showing me how you do everything? So long story short, he started showing me, basically what to look for when you're getting a car. He started to show me, you know, the certain values, how to sell the vehicles, where I would have to go to, what I have to look for basically in order to purchase a decent car. So me taking that information, I started to look at his overhead. I started to look at the fact that he was paying X amount of dollars in rent at his location. I started to look at the fact that even though he was getting these cars pretty cheap, he had to spend so much money to fix them up, and then he was a buy here, pay here, which meant if something went wrong with the car, obviously people aren't going to pay. So he had that situation as well where he's basically renting out a car. It really wasn't a lease because, somebody gets a car and then something's wrong with it. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get paid from them because they feel like the car isn't working properly. There's also a thing in Georgia where it's like a Georgia lemon law. If you sell somebody a car that, wasn't or isn't working properly, they can get their money back, so on and so forth. So I started to see these cracks in this guy's business, right? And I said to myself, how can I do this without having, such a big overhead the way he did and such a big headache the way he did? And what I started doing was going online and looking at junk cars. And I would get a junk car and then I would just flip the junk car. So for instance, if somebody in Texas had a car that was $300, I would post that car in Georgia for $500. Or honestly, I would post it for like $1,000, right? And I was like the liaison. I was the middleman. I would basically sell a car that I know I was about to purchase for $300 for $1,000, but I would be completely 100% honest with people and let them know that it was a scrap vehicle, or not a scrap vehicle, but it's not working or whatever the issues were. I basically laid everything down on the line, right? So by the time I got somebody that was serious enough to buy the car, I still was making a profit with them knowing all the issues that were wrong with the car. And when it came to the person who owned the vehicle, it was like they were happy to get it off of their lot. So I paid $300 for a car that, is no good, and then I would sell it for $1,000. Now, typically, my niche and how I would make it happen, I would look for specific type of cars where people were okay with fixing them up. If you go and like try to get like a Buick Regal, not too many people care about getting a Buick Enclave or a Buick Regal or something like that and fixing it up. So usually I would look for Camaros. I would look for Dodge Chargers, Challengers, any type of vehicle where somebody would have interest and invest in a little bit more money in it, even if it wasn't running, right? So I got very successful with doing that. And because I got successful with doing that and he's seen that, he stopped dealing with me. Like, I remember one time I came back to his spot because at the time I was using his spot to wash the cars a little bit before I would have somebody pick them up. And he kind of, obviously was aware of what I was doing. So for him, he felt like, oh, okay, he not taking my advice. He not doing it. He started to try to pick apart every little thing I was doing because it wasn't necessarily the way he was doing it. And at one point, like I said, it got to a point to where he confronted me and he's like, hey, look, man, you think you got it all together, this, that, and the third. And it was a conversation of arrogance. It was a conversation of annoyance by him, obviously, and arrogance. And he just really was just upset that I was able to make money quicker while doing less and taking the good parts of what he taught me and being able to implement what I knew would work a little bit better. But like I said, it was kind of outshining him. And because it was outshining him, it created a rift between me and him. And it also created a situation where technically, whether he knew it or not, I still needed advice from him, right? Like, I still needed to learn more. Even though I was making money, I still could have learned a lot more, because after that scenario and after that situation, when we decided to part ways and I decided to leave him alone, what ended up happening was I wanted to advance in what I was doing. I didn't want to stay stagnant and just selling the vehicles that I was getting from online sales and stuff like that. I wanted to figure out what the next step was. And he actually did have the next step. Now, we're talking about, 15 years ago, where the internet was there 15 years ago, but the knowledge behind the access wasn't as fluent as it is now, as it relates to some things that you can do next in order to advance in that type of a career, right? So, to my point, what I was struggling with was trying to figure out how I get my dealer's license. How do I go about getting a chauffeur's license? Because at the time I was thinking, shoot, I can keep some of these cars, fix them up, and then maybe I could start a taxi service, so on and so forth. And here's the thing, even if I did go on the internet and I was able to figure some stuff out, specifically in Atlanta, I've lived in a lot of states, but specifically in Atlanta, it's all about who you know. And he did know people, right? So if I was able to kind of tone down how I was doing things and make him a part of what I was doing, because I think that was the bigger situation. When I started doing what I was doing, I took off, and I wasn't asking for his advice as much as I typically would. So I think if I would have made him more of a part of what I was doing and kind of broke him off, gave him a little bit of money, so on and so forth, I could have kept that relationship going. He could have felt like he was a part of what I was doing. And then I could have said, hey man, who do you know in this department? Who do you know at, this department where I can continue to advance what I was doing? So I think it is very crucial to know who you outshine and who you don't outshine, because that particular situation within itself is a good example business-wise, how sometimes people can get a little jealous, and sometimes maybe it's rightfully so. I could have possibly, like I said, made him a part of it, and then he could have felt like his feelings were heard or appreciated, rather, would be the better word. But instead, I was younger, like I said. So for me, I wasn't necessarily thinking about the consideration of how somebody gonna feel. I was thinking about the consideration of how my family was gonna feel with me bringing in money so that we can live a little bit better. But I would have handled that better along the guidelines of that parable of not outshining the master. Now, fast forwarding into parenthood, me having 3 little girls, for me, I learned the concept of letting my kids win, right? You see some parents that, they push their children, and I push my children, trust me. But on small scales, playing checkers, letting your kids win, racing, letting your kids win, riding a bike and letting your kids win. Some things like that can build confidence. It necessarily doesn't build character, but I think within a certain age range, it's okay, just because it can build confidence for that child, right? And it shows compassion in a certain way. If you're developing your child in a way where they understand that you're going to push them and you're going to support them, 9 times out of 10, they're going to begin to realize that you're letting them win. And when that happens, that's not always a bad thing. I think for me, or for my experience, the child realizes Dad loves me enough to allow me to see how this feels, right? And then for me, my situation, I've seen my oldest daughter do it with her younger sisters when they were younger. Now, I had this thing like, when you turn 12, I'm going to begin to kind of mold you a little bit more and baby you a whole lot less. I always tell my kids, like, this world isn't pretty. So after you turn 12, it's a whole different scenario for me. I'm extremely, I wouldn't say militant. I'm very as a matter of a fact in a lot of the things that I do. So when they turn 12, it's like I'm not going to baby you. I remember, like I said, when my kids are younger, obviously you kind of give them some slack, but there's some things I didn't give them slack on. Like, I didn't talk like a baby to them when they colored and stuff like that. If the coloring wasn't well, I would let them know that don't look good. You need to fix that. And if they drew something and the drawing didn't look like what they drew, I'll let them know, hey, you need to go back and fix that. But when it comes to, like I said, like a game or something like that, where they're trying and they're giving their best effort, then I would cut them some slack because I can see the effort behind what they're doing. So I think outshining also plays a part in parenting as well, in that effect where you have to decipher what can grow confidence and morale with your child, and with small things. And this can just be with people, right? Like, I used to have my own company, right? And I would hire some people that kind of had like a checkered past, or trying to, get back from being being in a bad situation, and they lack confidence. So it was important for me to praise some of the small things people did, so that they can understand, hey, somebody cares, somebody appreciates me, somebody wants me to do well, somebody sees what I'm doing, and now I want to do a little bit more, I want to do a little bit better. So I think outshining also plays a factor in that way as well. But you guys let me know what you think. I appreciate you for tuning in. Again, like I said, my name is Cam's Brain, and this is my humble opinion. You guys leave a like, a comment, and please subscribe as well. And let me know how you feel about this. Do you feel like it's okay to outshine someone, or to not outshine someone? Do you feel like that offers vulnerability, or do you feel like it's a good thing to know when you should stay humble, when you should kind of coast through certain things, just so that maybe you can learn more, and so that you can show appreciation to the person that you're around? I'll be very interested to know that. Again, I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Peace.